What's up, everyone? Kyle here. I am super excited to share that my audiobook version of Travel Tips is up now. You can find it on Audible, Libro.fm, and anywhere else that you get your podcasts. Go check it out and buy a copy. It also has 30 minutes, a little over 30 minutes of bonus commentary that isn't in the actual book, so that's a little added bonus. But go check it out. I appreciate all the support, and I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Welcome, everyone. This is Our Travel Experiences. I'm your host, Kyle Rasmussen, and today I have with me a good friend, Michael. Michael, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Kyle. How are you?
I'm doing good as well. I'm excited to hear about your fishing stories. I know you've done all sorts of different fishing in all various locations around the U.S., so I'm excited to hear about those.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun. So a little bit of backstory on me. I've been fishing, pretty much as early as I can remember. There's pictures of me with a fishing rod where I could hardly stand with it.
Yeah.
But my grandpa has taught me pretty much everything I know. He instilled that passion in me really early on. And at the end of the day, I just think it's a great way to get outside, focus on your mental health. And, when you get out on the river or the lake or whatever, it's nothing else matters other than the moment you're in right there, trying to catch whatever you want to catch, which I really love. But in terms of, spots I've been fishing, I could talk for a really long time about stuff, but in terms of stuff that I think would be most interesting for listeners to hear about, number one is Florida fishing. So I grew up on the East Coast, and out here in Washington, when you meet people, they've all been to Hawaii. It's a super short flight, but when you live on the East Coast, it's a considerably longer flight.
Yeah.
So rather than people going to Hawaii on the East Coast, they all go down to Florida. And that's what my family would do. We would at least try to make it down there once every other year, once a year. After my parents divorced, my dad and I have made some fun trips down there together, which has been great. And in Florida, you can do anything and everything. They've got incredible freshwater fishing. You can literally walk down the street, pick a canal that looks like a mud hole, and catch some of the most beautiful fish you've ever seen.
Really?
It's literally an aquarium down there. They've got these type of cichlid called a peacock bass. They're just green, yellow, you name it. They've got super cool spots on them. They're super aggressive. You can catch largemouth bass down there. They probably have 1,000 different varieties of aquarium fish that live in those waters because people are crappy, and instead of flushing their fish down the toilet or giving them away, they release them into the wild. And when you've got 90 degrees and humid year round, a lot of those warm water species from South America thrive. Which is really cool to be able to catch all that stuff. Not so great for the natural ecosystem down there, but the freshwater fishing in Florida is incredible. Saltwater stuff, inshore, offshore. My absolute favorite is getting on a short little skiff and fishing shallow water in the Everglades. You see sharks out there. Catch a bunch of different types of fish, sea trout, redfish. I've hooked a triple tail out there, which I'm sure not a lot of people know what that is, but it's a really interesting fish that usually lives offshore on weed lines. Every once in a while, they'll drift inshore, but they lay on their sides and just drift in the current, and they disguise themselves as a weed patch. So they drift in with the weeds and they'll eat little fish that are using the weeds as cover.
Yeah.
So that's their way of ambushing their prey.
That's
which is
wild.
super cool. And then on top of that too, I mean, one of the coolest experiences I think I've had out in the Everglades, there was one time, or I guess two experiences. One time we were really getting back into the islands, into these really small little channels that are maybe big enough for two boats to go through at a time. And we found this area over to the right that was all matted down, looked like a nest. And we were talking about what it was. Our guide said, yep, that is a saltwater crocodile den. We see her every once in a while out here, but when she's egg laying, that's where she'll sit for months until all of her eggs hatch. And we thought we weren't going to see her. She wasn't sitting on the nest, but we got about 100 yards further into the channel and her head popped up and was just staring at us. And a saltwater crocodile, I mean, that's what Steve Irwin's forte was.
Yeah.
Those things grow to 25 feet long.
Jeez.
It is one of the most unreal things you've ever seen, to see a creature twice as long as your boat staring at you. And this didn't happen to me, but a story that I heard on that same nest, she was sitting there and they brought the boat up alongside it, and there was maybe a foot between the shore and the boat. But the nest was another 20, 25 feet back, so they thought it was a safe distance. The crocodile got spooked that they were so close, and her only way of escaping was to run out to the water towards the boat. And they didn't give enough space between the shore and the channel for her to get in. So she ran across the deck of the skiff to get into the water on the other side.
Oh,
like,
yikes.
Could you imagine a 25-foot reptile running across your boat, literally like as close as you and I are sitting? Probably even closer
terrifying.
than that. Yeah. Like one wrong move, or it decides it wants to take a nip at you.
Oh my gosh.
You could be done.
Yeah, screw that.
Yeah. But I mean, on a lighter note too, you see so many dolphin out there. It's super, super cool. There was one day we were out there, we saw a pod of dolphin maybe 150 yards away, and our captain slowed the boat down and started pounding on the hull of the boat with a little gaff that he had. And I guess the dolphin are used to the humans enough and know that when a human makes those vibrations or that noise in the water, it means they want to see the dolphins.
Yeah.
And the dolphins will come play with
wild.
you. So yeah, we sat and waited for the dolphins to approach our boat. And we were just running super, super slow. And they were using, I don't even know the physics behind it, but using the wake of the boat to kind of just glide and ride along with us. You're sitting down on the front, looking down, and they're staring right back up at you.
That's cool.
It's magical. Man, have you ever heard about how those things hunt?
Dolphins?
Yeah.
No.
So this isn't down in Florida, but I was striper fishing in Bethany Beach, Delaware, about a couple hours from Philadelphia, where I grew up. And we weren't expecting to catch a whole lot, but we had seen some fish moving in the surf, so we figured we would give it a try. And I started probably catching a fish every 3 casts out of this school of 12 to 20 inch stripers that were 30 feet off the bank. And out of nowhere, a pod of dolphins shows up, maybe 9 or so, or 8 or 9. And they started attacking this school of striper that I was trying to catch on the beach. And they came in pairs of 2s and 3s, and it was so coordinated they would attack from different sides to keep them corralled.
Yeah.
So they would have one group come and hit them from the right side, another group would come and hit them from the left side, and then the last group would hit them from the front and push them back into the shore. And they did that until there was no more fish.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's dolphins are something else, man.
Huh. That'd be wild to see that.
Yeah, I wish we have porpoise out here, which are still cool, and I mean the humpback whales on the West Coast also are special in their own right. We might not have bottlenose dolphins, but man, seeing a humpback whale breach, that's something else.
I was really lucky. I got to see that one time when I was going out to the Channel Islands.
Yeah.
And it was a mom, and she had her little baby with her. They were in close to the shore, but just floating along. You could just see the top of them.
It's really lucky to see a baby too.
Yeah.
That's not common at all.
It must have just been born or something like that. I don't know. I don't know how anything about fish, but
yeah.
That was cool. Yeah, there's so many wild. The ocean is just a wild place.
Yeah, that reminds me. On the subject of humpback whales, it was the first time we had ever made a trip up to Alaska. So my mom, her biological father, so technically my grandfather, but my grandma remarried when my mom was a toddler. So her dad now is who she considers to be her dad, actual dad, but biological dad lives in Ketchikan, Alaska. So we went up and visited him. He's a great guy, has a wonderful wife, and all of my mom's half siblings are awesome, and they're super fun to be around. We went out salmon fishing the first day we were in Ketchikan. It was the first fish we had hooked. My little brother called the first fish. So I'm like, okay, you do your thing, you reel it in. And when we were getting in there, Andy, that's my mom's biological father's name, was talking about, we're probably going to see bears. We're going to see more bald eagles than you've ever seen in your entire life. We're going to see whales, seals, like this, that, and the next thing. And, I think we all had a little bit of doubt. We were like, he's just trying to get us excited and hype us up. Like, there's no way that all of that is going to happen in the 3 days that we're there. And first day out salmon fishing, my brother's reeling in his first fish, and a whale breached 50 yards behind the boat.
Oh, wow.
And my little brother was dead convinced that the fish he was reeling in was that whale and not an actual fish.
I would think that would feel a little bit different.
Yeah.
That line would probably immediately be gone.
It's the difference of having a fair shot versus tying your line to a submarine or a freight train or something like that and expecting to stop it. But I think he was probably 10 or 11 years old at the time, so he just thought it was the coolest thing ever. I mean, it was super cool, but I was like, Patrick, you got a fish on. Like, you see the whale, it's swimming the other way. You're still bringing it in. It's not the same thing. But that trip, we saw everything that he said we were going to see. They have a house right down on the water where there's actually a creek that flows into the sound there that connects to a salmon hatchery. So they have salmon running probably 6 months out of the year right in front of their house.
Jeez.
Which is so much fun.
Yeah, that's cool.
You just walk 50 feet out onto their rocks and start casting a line and you'll catch something. And then the bald eagles up there, man, they are like seagulls. They'll fly in flocks.
Really?
When you're out on the flay table cleaning fish, they're out there on the rocks fighting over the fish carcasses. It is the most unbelievable thing. And last great Alaska story that I have actually is funny because we were talking about this before recording the podcast. I was trying to think of like, okay, what's, like some sketchy experiences, because I've had some sketchy ones, but I wasn't happening to be fishing when I was doing them. This was the sketchiest fishing experience I've had, where I was out on that creek catching salmon. There was a couple other guys on the opposite bank because that was the public beach, but I was on the private side because Grandpa lived up there. Yeah. Benefits of having a family member that lives on the water. But I had 3 fish sitting on the bank next to me. I was super proud of myself. I was like locked in. I'm like, all right, I'm going to catch another 2 or 3, and that's my limit, and we'll have a great dinner tonight. And I didn't notice I had a guy on the other bank who had been like waving at me, and he started shouting. And I'm like, hey, like, what's going on? And he points upstream, and I turn and look. There's about a 600-pound black bear walking down the bank just straight towards me. Oh, like, gosh. I made eye contact with it. Like, it is coming to me. It is not just wandering. And I think it smelled my fish. Yeah. So I slowly backed away, as you do with bears. I took cover behind a very large rock about 30 feet away from my fish pile, and he came up, smelled them, picked up one of the fish, but the tide was running out on the creek, so there were live fish that were getting washed down the creek, and they would be splashing here and there. And he heard a live one coming down the creek, and he left my fish, turned around, and decided he wanted to work for his catch. And then he didn't catch that fish. Oh. But I'm very happy that he decided to turn around and walk the other way instead of coming back and taking the easy meat.
Yeah. So did he just left after that? Okay. Mm-hmm.
But it's so common to see bears up there. They've had bears get into the grocery store before they're in town. And then what I was saying with cleaning the fish out on the fillet table, and the seagulls will be fighting over the carcasses. You'll see them out there fighting, and all of a sudden they'll all fly away. And that's when the bears come in. He'll pick up whatever he wants and keep on walking.
Jeez.
Yeah. It's not uncommon to see 4 or 5 bears a day out there.
Wow.
It's crazy.
I'm sure that got your heart pounding a little bit.
Oh, man. Yeah. I think there's only 2 or 3 times that I've had my heart pounding that much. And it was either a car accident or when I got charged by a moose this last hunting season. Gosh. But that's a story for a different day. Slightly
definitely want to hear
subject.
About that.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that once we're done recording this. But yeah, man, I mean, just wildlife when you're getting out and fishing. Even out here in eastern Washington, northern Idaho, when I go up to Montana, I've always got bear spray and a gun on me at all times just to be safe. You see a lot of wolf tracks when you're getting out in the backcountry. Bear and cat tracks, not so much, but they're around. Which that's the creepy thing. I'm not so afraid of bears because if they hear you coming, they're gonna leave.
Yeah.
And then if they're there, you're going to hear them because they weigh 300 to 700 pounds and they'll break everything they touch as they're meandering through whatever it is. Cats, on the other hand, they could be in a tree, they could be in the ground, they could be sitting on a cliff above you, and you wouldn't even know they're there.
Yeah.
there's been times where I've seen really fresh cat sign, but you don't have that sixth sense feeling that you're in any danger.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's times where I've been out there that you don't see a single track, but you can feel their eyes piercing the back of your head. You know they're there. You have zero idea where they are, and that is the creepiest part about it.
Once you see them, it's too late.
Yeah, usually. Thankfully, we haven't had a lot of cat attacks in Washington, but if I were to be down in Colorado, I feel like it's 3 or 4 times a year there's a video coming up on social media where a guy is getting backed down by a cat and shooting the ground in front of it, and it still doesn't stop. That's a scary thing when you find a cat that has zero fear of humans or has never seen a human before. It just sees you and it thinks, man, that's a really big meal.
Yeah. It makes you feel like, I think humans are so removed from the food chain in our daily lives, but once you're out there in the wilderness,
you're a part of it again.
You realize just how vulnerable you are.
And the worst part about it is that we might be the most intelligent species out there, but unless you're living in the city or in the suburbs, you're a part of the food chain.
Yeah.
And you're not the top of it either, which is very humbling.
Yeah.
For sure. But yeah, I think it's just great to get out there. And honestly, that humbling and that reconnection, I feel like is something that gets left out a lot in our daily lives. Similar to you traveling and running, it's like that reconnection to who you are and why you do what you do. But yeah, let's see what other.
Yeah, well, let's go back to the deep sea fishing in Florida. Okay. So what's been some? Tell me of one of those fun experiences.
Oh man, deep sea stuff. So I think the coolest thing, just about Florida in general, I touched on it earlier, is the variety. Deep sea fishing, you can do so many different things. You can go to a wreck and drop down pieces of fish and squid and be catching snappers or groupers all day. You can go out and you can troll big baits, or you can cast live baits out on weed lines and catch mahi-mahi, catch tuna, things like that. My personal favorite is drifting live baits for sailfish. Every once in a while you'll catch a marlin down in Florida, but the sailfish, they migrate right through the Gulf Stream off the eastern coast of the state. So if you get out there and there's fish in the water, odds are you're going to catch at least one. And when you hook up to them, it's nothing like you've ever seen before. I don't know if you're familiar, but the sailfish is the fastest fish in the ocean.
Really?
It's been clocked at 78 miles an hour.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So you hook up to one of those things, they not only swim really fast, but they jump, and they jump a lot. So they will run for 50 yards at 70 miles an hour, and then you'll see them way out there. They'll be dancing on their tail, trying to get rid of that hook. And the dorsal fins on them, when you get them in, you pull it up, and it's why they've got their name. It's literally just a giant sail on their back. And I don't understand why they have that big of a fin. It's pretty interesting. I'm assuming that they'll use it trying to corral bait fish, and they'll raise it and use it like a wall.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But when they're swimming, it's never out. You would mistake them for a marlin 9 times out of 10 if you were to just see one swimming in the water. But man, they're a super cool fish to catch.
It's got to be a fun fight to get that thing in.
Yeah, it's never long because they might be the fastest fish in the ocean, but they tire themselves out pretty quickly. So 10 to 15 minutes in, usually by the time they've done their fourth run and jumped 7 or 8 times, they're ready to come in and get the hook taken out. But they put on a great show. It's super entertaining. There was one fish that I caught the last time we were doing an offshore trip in Florida called a permit. And I had seen them on the covers of fishing magazines and on Instagram and stuff. And I had always known that they were a sought after fish to catch. Like bonefish is another very popular one that people will travel the world trying to catch a bonefish. It's one of those bucket list things where they're super rare, hard to catch, but when you catch one, it's super, super rewarding. We were finishing up the day after riding around and pitching weed lines for mahi. We were just going to pull up on a wreck, drop anchor, and try to catch our limit of snappers before going in. And the second we get up to this wreck, I'm sitting in the tower with the captain, and we can see just these giant dark silhouettes that are suspended. We're like 60 feet of water. They're suspended maybe at 20 feet, a school of 20 of them cruising around. And the captain just started going absolutely ballistic. He's yelling at the mate to get a bait in the water, get a line in the water. And the second he got the bait out, it hit the water. He closed the bail. The fish bit it instantly. And it was just one of those super, super hard fights where the fish is running. It's not letting you take any line on it. Permit's probably one of the hardest fighting fish pound per pound I think I've caught in my life. And it was a big one that I caught too, but I didn't understand at the time. I had known that they were a sought after fish, but I didn't understand what all of the hype was about getting a line in the water until I was talking to the captain afterwards. He's like, you realize you just caught a once in a lifetime fish.
Jeez.
There's people that will fish for 5 or 10 years and be lucky to catch one half that size.
Wow.
Which, yeah, I'll make sure I send you a couple of these pictures
that'd be cool.
after the fact. 'Cause I don't know if there's any way to have pictures connected with the podcast just so people can see what I'm talking about. But those permit are absolutely incredible. And I didn't realize how rare they were until after I had caught one, which just made it even more special. I mean, if I were to just catch it and they wouldn't have said anything, I would have been like, man, that's a really cool fish, a lot of fun, but I wouldn't have had the appreciation for it like I did, which was super awesome.
Yeah.
Other cool stuff in Florida. I mean, my favorite fish to eat out there is blackfin tuna. You'll catch a couple of those things and get back to the dock, cut up some fresh sashimi on the fillet table, and it is the best after fishing snack you can have. Some fresh sushi.
I don't know what it is about being out on the water and then coming back and eating that fresh fish.
Yeah.
Man, that's like the best thing in the world.
Yeah. There's a lot of restaurants down there too, where you can keep your catch after the day and bring it to the restaurant and they'll cook it for you.
Oh, that's cool.
One of the days we did that inshore trip and we caught our limit of sea trout, sea trout, snappers, a couple extra things that day. But we took all of our fillets to a restaurant that was right next to the dock. And I think they charged us $35 to cook everything. They prepared it 3 different ways for us on this giant sampler platter. So we had like beer batter fried, grilled, and I think blackened was the third one. But it was really cool just to try all of those different preparations for the same fish. And the different seasonings and how that changes the flavor of the fish. Was really cool.
Which one did you like best?
I'm a sucker for beer battered or blackened. I think that's my favorite. I definitely would say though that the mahi that we caught on that trip, the mahi was best grilled. I think that's one of my favorite fish to eat. Super
same.
fresh, and it honestly doesn't need a whole lot of seasoning or anything like that. It's got a great flavor on its own. But yeah, mahi, that's another fun one to catch. I've never caught a big one, but they'll jump the same way sailfish do. And they'll go absolutely ballistic after you hook them.
What's the longest fight you've had to get one?
The longest fight I've ever had was on a 9-foot long lemon shark. I believe that was 45 minutes. And I took a nap after. Yeah,
arms are probably just dead.
Yeah, and that was a stand-up fight too. A lot of times when you're fishing for sailfish or other billfish like that, you'll have a chair that you can stick the rod in, and you have a little bit more leverage. With this one, I was using the heaviest setup on the boat. I had nothing tied to the boat, nothing holding me in place, and this thing just absolutely worked me. I would get it to within 25 feet of the boat, and we got a great look at it, and it would just turn and run another 100 yards. It probably did that 5 or 6 times. But yeah, those big sharks, man, they never give up. They're feisty. And plus they're super pretty. I will say this, not to get political, but as an advertisement for the Florida fishery, a lot of people are worried about shark populations, things like that. I'd say internationally, yes, that's a problem. But down in Florida, they have zero problem. I mean, in fact, I would say they have a shark problem because 75% of the shark species that they have down there are all federally protected. So they've got a lot of sharks. They're growing really big. And even the ones that you can keep, not a lot of people keep them and not a lot of people eat them.
Yeah.
Which is why they have millions of bull sharks in their waters. And I'd say that's the biggest problem. Is the most common shark species down there is also the most aggressive, which is why we see Florida having the highest shark attack numbers out of anywhere in the world.
Yeah, it does make you feel safe on the beach down there.
Yeah, I actually saw a video last night of there was a guy fishing in the Everglades, and he stuck his hands off of the side of the boat and was rinsing blood or fish oil or whatever off of his hands. He had a shark bite his hand and drag him into the water.
Oh God.
Yeah. That's another video I've got to show you after this. But yeah, I saw that, and that's something that I've done before. So yeah, the fact that there's that risk, and you never know where that 7 to 10 foot long animal could be. I mean, yeah, the saltwater crocodiles, all that stuff, that's scary, but you'll see them if they're coming. A lot of times you won't see the sharks until it's too late.
Nope.
But they're super fun to catch. Yeah, I mean, going back to all the sharks that they have in Florida, like, I'll just go out there on a bridge, hang out and drink beer until it gets dark. And I'll use a couple of the fish that I caught off the bridge during the day, put on a big hook, wire leader, super heavy rod, and drop it off the side of the bridge. And I think my best night on the bridge, I caught 12 sharks in three hours.
Wow.
So there's a lot of them.
I guess so.
Yeah, they come out at night and they're feisty. Yeah, the hardest part is getting the hook out of their mouth after you've
how do you do
landed
that?
them. On the bridge, you've got to scout it out beforehand. You've got to figure out what you're going to do mentally before you've even put a bait in the water, because it can happen so quick. The bridge that I fish on the most, I had a spot picked out where I could at least get the shark shallow, get a rope on its tail, and drag it to a shallow enough spot where I could work with it. Because you don't want to be in knee-deep water with a pissed-off animal like that with real big teeth. But yeah, most of the time I would kind of just cut the wire and leave the hook in just to prevent anything potentially happening to my hands. But that's the nice thing too about fishing in saltwater, is that saltwater is so corrosive that even if you do leave a hook in their mouth, it'll usually rust out within a month.
Wow.
And it's not going to inhibit their ability to feed at all or anything like that, which is great. That it's super fun for the angler, but also super safe for the shark. Because that's another thing for me is, if I'm not going to keep the fish, if I'm not going to eat it, I want to make sure that it's healthy and still swimming once I've had my experience, because it wouldn't be fair to catch the fish, kill it, and then just dump it.
Dang, that's wild. I know my uncle, when I was down in Florida, we were just kind of hanging out on the beach, and then there was some manta rays that were coming by, and he was just casting out there, and he caught one of those, and it was fun just to watch him, work it and bring it into the shore. And
did it jump at all for you guys?
I don't remember it jumping at all. No, but
that's another thing that you've got to look up is jumping manta rays. Those, some of the coolest videos you'll ever see in your life is a 30-foot long stingray jumping out of the water. You would never think that that's something that they would do, but during their migration, their mating season, I guess it's either to knock off parasites or it's like a mating ritual, but they'll jump 10 feet out of the water.
Jeez.
It's insane.
Like I said, the ocean is terrifying.
Oh man.
They got all kinds of monsters in there.
Yeah. Well, dude, even in freshwater, we've got those monsters. Just out on the Columbia River, we've got 20-foot long sturgeon. You hardly ever see them, but they're there. I went on a striped bass fishing trip earlier it was over Memorial Day. I was back visiting the East Coast, and we were trolling in the Hudson Bay. Like, we could see the New York skyline out there. It was super cool. And our captain was like, yeah, like, we might see a sturgeon or something like that. It's pretty common for them to jump. And we ended up seeing 4 or 5 of them jump that day. That were all that 5 to 6 foot range. But they have a green sturgeon out there on the East Coast, which is nowhere near the size of the white sturgeon that we have out here. Quick West Coast sturgeon story, just of me seeing the biggest fish I've ever seen in my life. So I'll start out with the funny part and then work to the sturgeon part. So this was the funniest, I think, fishing story that I have. My grandpa has a 24-foot long jet boat. The thing probably weighs 4,000 pounds, super heavy. and it's got an inboard jet in it. So it's got all the controls in the front. The jet motor is actually inside of it rather than it being on the outside of the boat. And we didn't check any of the things with the boat before we put it in. We made sure the plugs were in. So we did that. We didn't sink, but we got in the water and we didn't realize the steering column for the jet was locked up. So we launched the boat. We're all sitting in the boat. We started it up and we're like, all right, let's go out to the fishing spot. We were going to be fishing the mouth of the Klickitat on the Columbia, and the boat wouldn't turn. So me being the helpful grandson I am, it was 50 degrees outside. I stripped down into my underwear and I jumped into the water behind the boat. Oof. And used a broomstick to jack I stuck it inside of the jet motor and jacked it to where it would free up and start moving back and forth again. So that was an interesting start to the day. And then we get out there and we were fishing for salmon. We didn't catch any salmon, but when you're using salmon eggs on the bottom, a lot of little sturgeon will pick at it. So we probably caught 20 of these little 12 to 14 inch sturgeon, which is super cool knowing how big they get to see a small one. And then I'm just sitting there on the side of the boat in La La Land, staring off into space towards the middle of the river. And all of a sudden I see the biggest fish I've ever seen not jump out of the water. It came up a third of the way out of the water. And its body that was out of the water, it was only a third of the way, like I said. It's 8 feet long.
Jeez.
Yeah. It just went up, fell on its back, made a giant splash. No one else saw it but me. So it's one of those fish stories, but yeah, it's the only time I've ever seen a sturgeon in person that was well over 10 feet. You'll see them out in the Snake River, Hell's Canyon down there. It's not uncommon to catch 8 or 9 footers, but those truly giant sturgeon that people would talk about from back in the day, they're hard to find now, but I guess they still exist.
Yeah, they're out there somewhere.
Yeah. Really deep in the middle of the Columbia River where it's like 300 feet.
Yeah.
The river's too swift to sit stationary and fish it, and too deep to get an anchor down.
Yeah. Yeah, those are wild. I mean, those are prehistoric animals. We went fishing down in the Columbia when I was probably like 8 at the time, and like it was like a family outing. All the guys in our family went out there, and we were fishing for sturgeon. But I think we caught those like 8 or 9 footers. But
those are still
like,
so
cool,
they
got some 20 plus footers out here.
Those 8 or 9 footers. I mean, the biggest sturgeon I've caught was 3.5 feet long, and that was still a 20-minute fight.
Yeah.
So I can only assume,
so wild.
Yeah, those big fish you were bringing in, some of them probably took over a half hour.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't think I caught any of the big ones, but I mean, there was like, it's some long fights for sure.
Yeah.
Actually, it was crazy. I remember the first, like, we got there on like a Friday afternoon, and I remember like our guide was like, oh yeah, let's just go out for a little bit, like, just see what we can do here before it gets dark. So we go out there, and like within the first 20 minutes, this huge cargo ship comes by. And this is like, I'm young and I haven't been on a boat too many times. Like nothing like that, like on a big river, big boats and that sort of thing. And so this cargo ship comes by and pushes up this wave. And we're on this fishing boat, which decent sized boat, but not that big. And I remember us going all the way up, like, and then just crashing down super hard. I was terrified out of my mind. I'm like, I'm gonna fall into this river. Like, I barely know how to swim.
Oh, if you fall into that river too, it's scary.
Yeah, that was
there's a lot of water moving through the Columbia, man. I mean, I don't know if anyone listening has ever driven over a bridge or driven through the gorge, but every single time that I drive down from Goldendale to Biggs Junction, I'll look off to the side because there's a couple buoys down there underneath the bridge, and they're always halfway underwater, like getting dragged because there's just hundreds of thousands of cubic feet of water moving through it every second. It's crazy.
I think that's one of the prettiest spots right there as you're crossing into Oregon, and just like looking out and see the Columbia go for a long ways. And,
yeah, man. I mean, is there anything else that?
Sure. Just maybe like a little bit about fishing in the rivers up here in Washington.
Yeah, man. Well, here in Washington, there's 1.5 million places to go fish.
Everywhere.
right now, I've mainly just been fly fishing strictly. Throughout the winter, we were spending a lot of time out on Lake Roosevelt, fly fishing from the shore, which was always a fishery that I never knew was there. I knew that you could get out there on a boat and you could troll deep for them and you could maybe catch a couple. But I not only didn't realize how many fish you could catch from shore, but just the average size we were catching out there too. I think it was all winter was 16 to 22 inch long fish. And every once in a while, we would catch a baby salmon out there too, which there's no ability for salmon to get into Lake Roosevelt when they're running or when they're spawning or anything. So the only way that fish got there was getting washed down from Lake Coeur d'Alene all the way down the Spokane River to Lake Roosevelt, which means it had to go down. I measured it at one point. I can't remember how long it is, but I think it's like 126 miles of river or something like that is the Spokane, and there's 7 dams along it.
Jeez.
So it got washed down 126 miles, and keep in mind there's no fish ladders on any of these dams. So it got washed through dam turbines.
Yeah.
7 of them.
That's insane.
And made it down there. It's like, talk about the Great Escape.
Yeah, honestly.
So that's always super cool. Right now, the Spokane River's been fishing incredibly. So since that opened up at the beginning of May, we've been fishing that a lot. It's been incredible. Even right here in Yakima, we've got one of the best trout rivers in the entire state with the Yakima River. Yeah. I actually went up the canyon last night and I only hooked one trout. I hooked it. It skyrocketed out of the water on me and threw the hook. But I had a guide drifting by in a boat by me when I did it. And he's like, hey, I saw it. That counts. And then I caught a bunch of little baby salmon too, which the Yakima River has never had a super productive salmon run on it, at least in the last 50 years. So seeing that many juveniles in the river system is really promising for what the run's going to be in 4 years. Because I've been catching more salmon on the Yakima recently than I have trout, which is something
surprising.
Else. Yeah. They're not very big, but they're super aggressive little 6 to 12 inchers, and you drop something in front of them, they don't care what it is. They just want to eat and get big so they can get out to the ocean. And then just in terms of lakes, I'm not super familiar with Central Washington lakes, so I can't really speak to the overall Yakima area. I do have a couple pins on spots that I want to check out here once the weather starts to cool down. But on the east side, we've got hundreds of them.
Mm-hmm.
All of those scabland lakes down by Ritzville, Moses Lake, they're all incredible. Even the lakes up north too. There's one lake I'm thinking of that is just northeast of Newport, and I have a couple buddies that'll be mad at me if I drop the name of
Yeah, I
it.
don't.
But I mean, we were fishing like pinky fingernail sized flies out there, and the average size fish are catching is 18 inches long. And
Wow.
a healthy 18 inches, like they've got big bellies on them, and they're all eating well. And I think that was my favorite thing about lake fishing early spring this year is I've always thought that you needed to fish a big, meaty looking fly that could pass as a spinner or something like that you would throw on a spinning rod to get their attention. But I never realized that you could just fish these tiny little natural looking patterns and fool big trout better than you could with just a giant flashy in your face lure that would piss them off. There's one lake that I'm thinking of, another one that I'm sorry guys, I'm not naming it. If you want to reach out to me and talk fishing, my Instagram is mboken, BOKEN 234. Feel free to slide into my DMs, and I'd be more than happy to start you out with some spots.
You can use his guiding services.
Yeah. Yeah, once we get that up and running, that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But there's another lake in north central Washington that is on a Indian reservation, and it's got a special breed of cutthroat trout in it that is the biggest substrain of cutthroat in the world. The world record was caught out of Pyramid Lake in Nevada. It was 26 pounds.
Jeez.
The state record for Washington was caught out of this lake I'm referencing is, I think if I remember correctly, it was close to 13. So it was half the size of what the world record is.
Wow.
But you can go out there and use those same fingernail sized flies and you're catching 20 to 30, 18 plus inch fish a day. It is nuts. You get out there in the morning and you're drinking beers on the beach, and by noon you'll have caught 10 or 12 fish.
Wow.
And you wait out the afternoon lull, just kind of leave it out there. But once it starts cooling off in the evening, the fish come back in shallow, and you'll see them cruising in pods of 150, 200 fish.
Jeez.
You just cast your fly out into the middle of it. You've got your bobber, and you watch them all swim in, and then all of a sudden your bobber's in the middle of the school, and you can literally just sit there and count it down. 3, 2, 1, bobber drop, set the hook, get another 18-incher.
Dang.
But it is so much fun just to explore and travel all the different stuff that Washington has to offer.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit earlier about some of the trips I've made up to North Idaho or up to Montana to fly fish, and all of that stuff's great. But I think not a lot of people realize the opportunity that we have within the state of Washington, and you just got to spend a little bit of time figuring it out. But once you've figured it out, man, you are going to get them.
Yeah.
You're going to get them every time you go out. Which is the best part about it.
Yeah, that's fun. I love hearing these stories. Okay, one last question for you.
Yeah.
Where's somewhere that you haven't been, but you really want to go to fish?
Oh, man. My number one fly fishing destination that I want to go to right now is New Zealand. They have the biggest rainbow trout in the world, and they also have some of the biggest brown trout in the world. And I have zero idea how to fish any of that stuff. I see all the videos that people post online, and they're consistently catching like 12 to 20 pound trout out there, which is absolutely nuts. Plus, I wouldn't mind doing the Mordor hike and all that other super cool stuff that New Zealand has to offer. I mean, that would just be a dream trip in terms of there's such beautiful scenery, a million places to camp out there, but then also it's got some of the best fishing in the world. Another one more I'll touch on briefly is I really want to go to Bolivia. They have a freshwater fish called Dorado, and they are super big, probably averaging 3 feet long. They're pure gold. They have the meanest set of jaws you've ever seen on a fish in your life, and they're super aggressive. And the best part about it is they live in 20-foot wide creeks that we would fish out here. Yeah. Versus you fish that stuff out here and you're catching a lot of little 8 to 10 inch trout. Yeah. But out there, you're catching a 36-pound giant that's going to completely work you. So I'd say those are my top 2 fishing destinations that I haven't been, but I really want to go check out at some point in my life.
Yeah, those sound amazing. Those would be some fun fights for sure.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing your fishing stories
thank you
and
for
traveling for those. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. We'll definitely have to chat more and
awesome.
Hear some more stories in the future too.
Well, yeah, I really appreciate you having me on the podcast, Kyle.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited we finally got to do this.
Yeah, me too.
It's a fun way to spend an afternoon.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you guys later. Hey everybody, Kyle here. If you enjoyed today's show and want more, you can always check out every episode on Spotify, Anchor, YouTube, and now Amazon Music as well. Just search for Our Travel Experiences on any of those platforms and it will pop up. You can also find everything all in one place on my website, ourtravelexp.com. And if you want to see my travel pictures as well as travel pictures from guests on the show, you can check them out on Instagram. The page is called Our Travel Experiences Podcast. And if you want to share your own pictures on the Instagram page or be a guest on the podcast, you can message me via that Instagram page or email me at ourtravelexperiences@outlook.com. I would love to see your pictures and hear about your travel experiences, so please send them my way. And if that isn't enough for you, make sure to check out my weekly YouTube show, From Around the World Fridays. Every Friday, I'm taking 5 to 10 minutes to answer questions from listeners, share some souvenirs that I bought over the years, share my postcards over the years that I've accumulated, or share videos and pictures from one particular city or country that I visited, and so much more. So check it out, guys. You won't be disappointed. And make sure you go subscribe to that as well. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you somewhere around the world soon.